On February 17, 2090, a flotilla of alien warships arrived in Earth's orbit, and for the next 7 years waged an apocalyptic war against the forces of humanity. When mankind finally emerged victorious, the planet had been decimated, and in a desperate bid to prevent the complete collapse of civilization, Earth was united under the governance of a single authoritarian regime that would become known as the Greater Terran Union. Today on Incoming, we investigate an alternate world of our own design with a look at the Greater Terran Union, or GTU, from our miniseries Stellaris Invicta. We'll go into how we came up with some of our ideas, why certain decisions were made, and even provide some resources for those of you looking to improve your skills in writing, graphic design, and other elements of world building, thanks to today's sponsor, Skillshare. But first, for those of you who haven't followed our Stellaris Invicta series, the Greater Terran Union was one of 4 nations developed by the Templin Institute, which were then given to our Patreon supporters to vote on which one would become the focus of an ongoing game of Stellaris. Every week, we've been streaming our progress on our Twitch channel, and then once a month, we produce an episode detailing the events of the game. Of the 4 nations we came up with, the others being the United Federation of Nations, the Soviet Union, and the Holy Solar Empire, the Greater Terran Union was by far the most authoritarian and closely resembled the fascist societies of World War II Germany, Italy, and Japan. When the GTU won our Patreon poll and we were given the opportunity to further develop its background, our primary goal was to retain these fascist elements, but give it a little more nuance and complexity. The Greater Terran Union may not be a place where you'd want to live, but as with any nation, it would never be evil just for the sake of being evil. And there needed to be understandable reasons why its society developed the way it did. This is where the idea of an alien invasion came from. If you've seen some of our earlier episodes on world building, you would know that I don't find a single world government all that interesting or believable, and a global fascist dictatorship seems even less likely. For a government like the GTU to come into being, there needed to be an enormous change to the political situation on Earth, and a dire threat that could unite all of humanity, and maybe make a little more willing to surrender some of its basic freedoms. Knowing we'd eventually be fighting alien empires in Stellaris, the idea of a prior alien invasion made a lot of sense and opened up some cool narrative possibilities. While the Greater Terran Union displays the usual tenets of a fascist government, ultranationalism, the militarization and regimentation of society and the economy, the ultimate goal of the GTU is to ensure that the existence of humanity is never again threatened. To achieve this, every aspect of human civilization needs to be managed as efficiently as possible without regard for personal liberty. For the GTU, the ends always justify the means, and every decision it makes stems from this one idea. But governments are still just made up of people, and not everyone thinks identically. In our earliest episodes covering the history of the GTU, we went out of our way to mention that even some of the highest members of the nation's government were horrified at some of the actions they were forced to take, adding what I hope is a bit of humanity and subtlety to what would otherwise be an implacable regime. The Greater Terran Union couldn't just be a 1930s authoritarian dictatorship in space, though. It needed to be modernized and then given some futuristic elements so it wouldn't feel completely out of place in the Stellaris campaign. Our answer was to introduce a tiered citizenship structure that forms the central pillar of the GTU society. Everyone in the GTU is assigned a citizenship tier that dictates everything from the type of employment they're allowed to seek, whether limitations exist on their freedom of movement, all the way down to the amount of water allotted to their showers each month. The system is fluid, with citizens gaining tiers or losing them depending on their performance, criminal activity, and other considerations. This was directly inspired by the civilian-citizen dynamic in Starship Troopers, the hierarchical structure of the Turians in Mass Effect, and the rating system portrayed in Black Mirror. A lot of research was also done on China's upcoming social credit system, which utilizes a lot of these same ideas. The citizenship tier system has been a huge hit, and it's been amazing seeing that take off in the comments of our videos and during our Twitch streams. With efficiency the primary driving factor of the GTU, it naturally operates as a meritocracy. The better your abilities, the higher your citizenship tier. The higher your tier, the further you can rise within the government. Almost nothing else is considered. For this reason, the GTU is actually very socially liberal. Regardless of race, creed, gender, or however a citizen might identify, whether it's gay, straight, transgender, or whatever else, they are afforded the exact same rights and responsibilities. While this might be morally the right thing to do, and I believe helps sets the GTU apart from other authoritarian regimes, the rationale behind it is more utilitarian than utopian. For the Greater Terran Union, people are essentially another resource, and to deny someone the chance to utilize their skills to further the goals of humanity because of their gender, race, or religion is inefficient. I really like the idea that this almost tyrannical society is doing the right thing for maybe the wrong reasons. It also means that if and when the GTU starts accepting aliens as citizens, it will be forced to confront its own values, which is another interesting narrative possibility. The government of the GTU is almost completely made up of military officers, first as a matter of necessity following the invasion, and then formalized a little later on. All too often, though, military leaders are portrayed as power-hungry warhawks, and I wanted to avoid this oversimplification. Also, given that the GTU's leadership was a coalition formed between many different states with different pre-war governments, economic systems, and ideals, it seemed only natural there might be a bit of pressure to return to the status quo once the situation had resolved. This was addressed by having the Greater Terran Union put forward a vote to voluntarily dissolve itself, only to have the people overwhelmingly support its continued existence. This vote was important as it defines a large part of the GTU's national character. It's not an illegal regime, but one formed by the consent of the governed. When it came to the GTU's executive office, I wanted to do something different than the standard dictator or emperor. I did a ton of research on various executive branches across the world and came across the federal council used by modern-day Switzerland. Not only was it really interesting and unique, I thought it perfectly fit the Greater Terran Union. Especially in its earliest days, the GTU would have been divided along former nationalist lines. Chinese citizens, for example, might not have been overly eager to be led by an American, or vice versa. By adopting the model of the Federal Council, representatives from all across the Earth formed the highest level of its government. Of course, both Stellaris and narrative reasons kinda demanded there be a sole leader, so we added the position of High Marshal, which acts as a kind of first among equals. The last major feature of the GTU, intended to make it stand out, are the Commissariats. These are essentially provinces that govern various regions on Earth and eventually sectors of space. The goal here was to make sure the GTU never felt like America in space or Germany in space, but instead reflected all of humanity and the nations that preceded the GTU. Just because the world is united under a single government doesn't mean that thousands of years of culture and tradition is immediately replaced. While at the time of this video we haven't had the opportunity to explore this idea thoroughly in any of our episodes yet, the Commissariats make it clear that historical, cultural, and national distinctions still remain in the GTU. So that brings us to the flag of the Greater Terran Union. If you're a regular incoming viewer, you know I'm a sucker for a good flag, so this part of the process is always a highlight. When it comes to fascist flags, there's not really even a roughly defined style like communist flags have, for example, but I really wanted to base it around a single, basic geometric shape. To me, that just seems very authoritarian. A triangle looks like the most warlike shape, don't ask me why, so I messed around with a bunch of variants before settling on one with a few segments cut out of it. Now, it is of course important that an emblem be designed with symbolism in mind, but I am not the strongest graphic designer, so my intention was to come up with something that looked cool first and then figure out the symbolism later. Even then, I cheated a bit and came up with the background story where the symbol was originally used as a resistance marker with no real meaning that eventually took on a life of its own and became a worldwide symbol of defiance. That just seemed a bit more interesting to me than the 3 points represent duty, honor, and glory or whatever. When it came to colors, I mostly just ripped off the Helghast, which was another big inspiration for the GTU as a whole. Of course, the best part of world building is seeing how people react to what you've come up with. Many people were asking in our Discord server and on YouTube why the Greater Terran Union would enact a one-child policy after the initial alien invasion. Surely, after losing so many people, that's the worst thing the GTU could do, right? Well, the intent was that even after the alien invasion had been defeated, the collapse of civilization across much of the world meant that there weren't enough resources for even the current number of survivors. Millions more were faced with famine, so the one-child policy was supposed to help stabilize the current population until the situation improved. It's been incredibly rewarding seeing people argue over points like that and having such fierce debates on what the GTU would do in a given situation, or whether their core values have been betrayed following a particularly divisive choice. Having an original creation discussed with the same amount of passion usually reserved for properties like Star Wars or Warhammer 40k has been my favorite part of Stellaris Invicta, and I'm looking forward to continuing the story of the GTU and perhaps other groups in future seasons. So you might have realized by now that world building can be kinda tough. In addition to all the research required, it really helps to be proficient in writing, graphic design, cartography, iconography, or basically whatever else you want to cover in your world. Well, Skillshare is an online community with thousands of classes that cover all these things and countless more. There's courses on how to create and design a realistic map, fictional universe storytelling, creative writing, and graphic design. Skillshare also goes far beyond world building. If you're interested in how we edit our videos and design the look of the Templin Institute, Skillshare can help you there too. Adobe Premiere Pro, After Effects, Photoshop, and Audacity are the backbone of the Institute, and Skillshare has courses covering all of them. We've been using Skillshare ourselves to help with social media and branding, and we've learned quite a bit. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes from experts working in their field, so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. It's also more affordable than most learning platforms out there. An annual subscription is less than $10 USD a month. For any Templin Institute personnel interested in Skillshare, click the link in the description. The first 500 people to sign up get 2 free months of premium membership. If you end up using Skillshare to help improve your world building or, I don't know, learn how to make fresh pasta, make sure to share it on our Discord server. Again, you'll find the link in the description. So that's how the Greater Terran Union came together. And this time, it's not just my opinion, but absolute, undeniable fact, although there's basically no difference. Did I forget to mention something though? Was there an aspect of the GTU you want to know more about? Where can you get a Pre-Kiki plushie toy? Ask away in the comments below and we'll do our best to get back to you. So until next time, this has been Incoming.
The Templin Institute investigates alternate worlds and realities. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to directly support us, vote in polls to determine future topics, and receive some cool rewards, please consider pledging to our Patreon page.